Welcome to this episode of The Wisdom of Paramahansa Yogananda, brought to you by Self-Realization Fellowship, where each week you can receive inspiration and guidance from Paramahansa Yogananda's Kriya Yoga teachings. The subject of this episode is finding soul guidance to navigate the maze of life's experiences by Brother Sevananda.
Good evening, everyone. Well, this might seem like a fairly daunting title, Finding Soul Guidance to Navigate the Maze of Life's Experiences. But in a way, I think it can be boiled down to one simple word that we're all familiar with, and which is perhaps one of those universal words or expressions that we first learn as a child in any language or culture, is the word ma or mom or mama. Perhaps right behind that, the next word or concept that we might come to learn and express is the word help. And then once we spot her, then we, pick me up, get me out of here. Or in our case tonight, is there anyone up there? Help, Divine Mother, as we try to navigate through the maze of life's experiences. I was reminded of a story, an oft-told story I thought I might tell again, but it's fun to hear another time because of the truth that's in it. And I think that's perhaps why we find stories humorous, because of the universal truth that's rooted in the particular story. And this was when that fellow was out walking and he stumbled over the side of a cliff, and as he was falling down into this bottomless chasm, he saw a branch and he grabbed onto it, broke his fall, and so there he was. He had avoided certain death, but still hanging on for dear life, still dangerously hanging over this bottomless chasm. And so, as anyone would, he shouted, "Is there anybody up there?" And to his surprise, he heard a deep, resonant voice say, "I am here." And he said, "Who are you?" He said, "I am God." Can't get any better than that. And so the man was thrilled and said, "Fantastic, Lord, what should I do?" And so the Lord replied, "Jump. Let go of the branch." So you can imagine there was an understandable moment of silence. And the man repeated, "You're asking me to jump." And again, the voice said, "Yes, trust me." And then the man thought a little further and then yelled out again, "Is there anyone else up there?" So, now we don't have to worry about the guidance we'll receive, at least not tonight. We're safe. There's no place to really jump here anyway. And we can trust that we have come to the right place, to this path, to the teachings of our Guru that can guide us in every aspect of our lives, and most importantly, that give us the tools whereby we can develop our own soul insight and understanding to navigate through the maze of life's experiences. And yet, I think all that being said, our friend's predicament on the side of the cliff is not too unlike perhaps our own situation, where we find ourselves in our own predicament, and we are looking for the way out. And then we realize through that inner voice of guidance that we receive that if we're going to get out of the mess or maze of our life's experience, there's probably going to have to be some jumping involved on our own part, some letting go of those branches that are very likely not serving that goal of getting our life back on track and going into the direction that we want to go. Be they branches of doubt or fear or relying only on our own will or intelligence, so that we might fall safely into God's arms and into His will, His courage, His intelligence. And it happened right away to our Guru in the training he got from Sri Yukteswar. You recall how his first meeting with Sri Yukteswarji ended somewhat inharmoniously, with Sri Yukteswar wanting our master, Paramahansa Yogananda, to return to his family in Calcutta, who had been predicting our Guru's return, and how our master said he was determined to do no swooping in the direction of Calcutta, and that he replied to his Guru, "Sir, I am not returning home, but I will follow you anywhere." You're catching on quickly. Now, that's not exactly what Sri Yukteswar was asking him. He wasn't asking for Master to follow him anywhere. He was asking him to return home to his family. In a similar way, just like we might say, "Oh, I'll do anything to find God," but not that. It was reminding me of Brother Premamoy, who had been the house brother, is what it's called. The nuns have their house mother, we have our house brother. And when we first enter the ashram, we get our initial training from that monk who is given that responsibility. And Brother Premamoy had that role for 25 years. So there was a real continuity in our order, and so many of us have so many shared experiences of those times. So it's no wonder that we tend to reference Brother Premamoy, who was very influential on those early years. But I remember Brother used to joke with us, and you can imagine when we come into the ashram, we're quick to say, "Oh, I'll do anything to find God. I'll surrender my life. I'm here to surrender my life completely to God and Guru." And Brother Premamoy would joke, he would say, he would see invariably the first bit of training, the first bit of correction that might come our way, the first time Master might put his finger even gently on a sore spot, then we would say, "Oh, but I didn't mean that." And Brother Premamoy would ask, "Well, what did you mean, if not that?" So it happens to everyone. So going back to our Guru story, we'll recall how the exchange between him and his Guru escalated from there. Reading from the autobiography, our master writes, "You will come to me in 4 weeks." For the first time, Sri Yukteswar's voice was stern. "Now that I have told you of my eternal affection and have shown my happiness at finding you, you feel free to disregard my request. The next time we meet, you shall have to reawaken my interest. I won't easily accept you as a disciple. There must be complete surrender by obedience to my strict training." Then look at what comes next. Our master writes, "I remained obstinately silent." See, there's hope for us. And this is why our Guru has written all this, for our sakes, to let us off the hook, so to speak, in the beginning, at least, not indefinitely. And then he goes on, "My Guru quickly penetrated my difficulty. Do you think your relatives will laugh at you? I will not return. You will return in 30 days. Never." The controversial tension unrelieved, I bowed reverently at his feet and departed. I'm sure we can all relate to some tense exchanges we've had with a loved one or spouse or friend, but this was between two avatars. And like during an earthquake, I wonder if the walls were just shaking a bit around them as they were having this exchange. But then we know our master went to Vrindavan. He had 30 days to think about all this. And then, of course, he did return to his Guru's hermitage and concludes the story as follows. "You have come. Sri Yukteswar greeted me from a tiger skin on the floor of a balconied sitting room. His voice was cold, his manner unemotional. 'Yes, dear master, I'm here to follow you.' Kneeling, I touched his feet. 'How can that be? You ignore my wishes.' 'No longer, Guruji. Your wish shall be my law.' That is better. Now I can assume responsibility for your life." And this is a very powerful moment in the autobiography, a very pivotal moment, as it potentially is in the life of each one of us. And with all proper respect from me to even comment on the lives of these great ones, yet isn't perhaps in a sense Master's autobiography also our autobiography, or at least the story of every soul's journey and the different stages that that devotee will go through and that needs to go through. So Sri Yukteswarji said, that is better. Now I can assume responsibility for your life. And then our Guru writes, I willingly transfer the burden, Master. And what does Sri Yukteswar say in response? My first request then is that you return home to your family. The Guru didn't change. God didn't change. God's not going to change his laws to fit our, not talking about our Guru, but our laziness or our limited understanding. And to make matters worse, Sri Yukteswar added, I also want you to enter college in Calcutta. Your education should be continued. He was just pouring it on right from the beginning. And our Master ended, very well, sir. I hid my consternation. Would importunate books pursue me down the years? First Father, now Sri Yukteswar. Someday you will go to the West. Its people will be more receptive to India's ancient wisdom if the strange Hindu teacher has a university degree. You know best, Guruji. My gloom departed. The reference to the West I found puzzling, remote. But my opportunity to please Master by obedience was vitally immediate. And so we see this is the richness of the spiritual path and the richness of the relationship with the Guru, with God. And like Arjuna and Sri Krishna, where Krishna, after Krishna revealed himself to Arjuna in his cosmic form, Arjuna begged forgiveness from Krishna if, in retrospect, he had ever been casual with his friend and cousin, actually. And not that we should ever be disrespectful to anyone, let alone the Guru. And yet he is the most approachable. He is the nearest of the near, our best friend, the dearest of the dear. And so we see in these stories, these real-life exchanges, how natural they are and how natural we can be with them. And how dynamic, how wonderful, how fun that relationship can be. And how even fun the path can be, even in the midst of our trials and life's experiences. But what it also means, in a very practical and spiritually practical sense, is that just like these great ones who humbly share their life stories with us, that if we're going to get out of the maze of our life's experiences, then sooner or later, inevitably, we will likewise have to make certain changes in our life or bring our choices in line with soul guidance if we want our life to be different. This is that word effort that is both compassionate but uncompromising at the same time. When Sri Yukteswar says, now I can assume responsibility for your life, we have responsibility too. And that's to follow that guidance, to follow that advice. And it would be illogical to think that we could just continue with whatever patterns or behaviors are not serving us, not serving our ultimate goal, while holding on to the branches of limitation, or to think that just by joining an organization or that somehow that God and Guru should just give us their blessings without making ourselves receptive to those blessings. In fact, our president, Sri Miralini Ma, once said that, yes, Master loves us unconditionally, but we have to make ourselves unconditionally receptive. And that's a very active quality on our part. It's putting that unconditional love, our unconditional love, into action. And so this is very much, I think, our own experience, the story that our Master humbly shares with us. I think in the same way we've come to the spiritual path, we similarly receive assurance of our Guru's eternal affection, because we're all souls, we're all equally loved by God. But after that initial meeting, the Guru, who is God's messenger, starts making some requests of us. whether it's through his teachings, whether it's through the inner voice of conscience, whether it's through the sense within, the inner guidance we receive, that we're going to get some requests that will seem contrary, that will be contrary to what we're habitually used to doing. So in a sense, let the battle begin. It's not a battle with the Guru. It's a battle within ourselves. And it's understandable, I think, that we'll resist the divine instructions of the Guru possibly for a long time until we can tune in with the Guru, until we want to tune in with the Guru and actually follow his guidance. I think, again, it's human nature. We're looking for the easy way out. And the irony, again, is that the Guru's way is the easy way out. It's the easiest way out of our troubles. But we're unable to trust that, like that fellow holding on. We hear it and we can sense it within, but our faith is not strong enough yet to be able to follow that. And if we need any other encouragement that we're not the worst devotee in the world, all we need to do is consider the prince of devotees, Arjuna himself. Because this was his despondency, this was his unwillingness in the beginning. It's natural. It's natural that we're going to have some unwillingness when we come to the path, we look at the Guru's teachings, we're going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to do some jumping. We're going to have to do some letting go. Not of everything, but of those things that don't serve us to reach the goal that we want to reach. And if you read the Gita, you see how the awareness of our unwillingness is a natural part of the unfolding realization and understanding we're starting to get about ourselves. We say, oh, that's how my mind works. That's why, I see, that's why I'm resisting the instructions of the Guru and so forth. In fact, quoting from our Master's Gita commentary, Paramahansa Yogananda said, to know that he lives in a state of cosmic delusion is man's first precious glimpse of truth. So we already have a lot of realization. We all know that we live in a state of cosmic delusion, which is actually our first precious glimpse of truth. But we also read and will come to know, like Arjuna, that if we want guidance from the soul, if we want to develop that sixth sense of intuition, that we need to follow the wisdom of the Guru and not destroy the senses, but add to their power by going to their source and connecting to that infallible well of divine truth within. Just a short aside about this false idea of being the worst devotee, which is just not so, and only brings unnecessary discouragement. I remember once in the ashram, as we do each Christmas, the monastics get together, the monks get together between themselves, and the nuns are celebrating between themselves. So monks were all together this one year, and on one evening, we had a visit from a couple of our directors, including our now president, Sri Muralini Ma. And she was talking to us about the Guru's unconditional love, his infinite love for each one of us. And she was reading from his beautiful poem, God's Boatman, where he says, I'll come again and again, if need be 1 trillion times, so long as I know one stray brother is left behind. But I remember when she finished reading that, she looked up from the book and then she looked out at each one of us. And then she said, but let's not be the last one and add to his burden. And I remember we all laughed, but at the same time, I felt I wasn't alone in averting my gaze from her. That uneasy feeling that there could be some truth in that, after all. All right, so what do we have to do to follow the Guru into that boat so that we might navigate through the maze of life's experiences? Let's now get into the method that our Guru has brought. And so first of all, if or when we find ourselves stuck or confused or afraid or not knowing which way to turn, what's the first thing to do? Stop. Stop. Not to keep running around or spinning our wheels, so to speak, or just stressing without doing something about it. No, stop. Become calm. Start to think things through more clearly. And then from that calmness, start to develop a likely course of action. We want to transmute that worry, the energy of those emotions that are stirring within us, into a course of action, an eventual course of action. In the How to Live booklet, Intuition, Soul Guidance for Life's Decisions, from Sri Dayamata. This really has everything on this subject. If you are inspired and want to really dive into it, then I would recommend this little How to Live booklet. It's so perfectly condensed, all the different points, and many more than we're able to go over tonight. In this booklet, Sri Dayamata says, in learning to make right decisions, the first step I would suggest to you would be, make meditation a regular part of your daily life. Now this, of course, makes sense to us. We would expect as much, but it is vital in order to have the calmness and the peace necessary that we might tune in with truth. And now notice, she didn't say that we have to meditate for hours. You know, sometimes our brains are just jumping ahead, all the things I'm not doing or should do and so forth. If we can meditate hours, all the better. She would be the first one to say that. Or she'd say, if we can make changes in our life so that we can start to have longer periods of meditation, of course she'd say that. But if we only have a few minutes, make those few minutes count and be regular. The first step might be just be regular with those few minutes. That's what she's saying. And she continues, without periods of interiorized meditation, your attention remains habitually concentrated externally in the sensory and mental impulses of nerves producing nervous tension. In this constant state of restlessness, you cannot receive divine guidance from within. And so we need those periods of silence, of stillness, of calmness, in order that the restlessness of the mind can slow down so that we can breathe and allow physical and mental stress to dissipate even somewhat. And then in that calmness begin to reason and feel what the right course of action should be. As our Master himself said, before embarking on important undertakings, sit quietly, calm your senses and thoughts, and meditate deeply. You will then be guided by the great creative power of spirit. And in fact, we know that Guruji says we should begin our entire day, not just before making an important decision, but to meditate when we awaken, again, even if just for a few minutes, so that we might establish and keep that attunement as a background to all our day's activities. Many of the older timers here will probably remember Mukti Mata, who was a disciple who came in the earlier years when our Master was in his physical form. And I remember in the talk of hers that accompanied the Self-Realization magazine a few years ago, she mentioned once about a devotee who was sincerely asking for God's help, who prayed, "Dear God, so far today I've done all right. I haven't gossiped and I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been grumpy, nasty, or selfish. But in a few minutes, Lord, I'm going to get out of bed. And that's when I'm going to need all the help I can get." There's that truth again. You know, we're all laughing. It's like we know everything's fine. And once we get out of bed, yeah. You know, we don't have families ourselves. You know, we certainly appreciate and understand and bow to you. We do. We have profound respect for how you follow Master's teachings. So if you can't immediately because of having to attend to the sadhana of your children right away or whatever else, well then when you can, sit and meditate deeply. Find those few minutes and try to make them a regular part of your life and start our day so that we're a little less grumpy and a little less all these other things as the days and months and years go by. And again, God's help is there. And the way to draw on that help, to make ourselves receptive, we have to create a channel. We have to make ourselves unconditionally receptive, as Marilyn Ma said, to that help, to those blessings, to that power, to that calmness that will transform our lives. Now, another benefit to establishing this regular habit of meditation is, as Dayama continues in this booklet, she says, it begins to loosen those knots that tie us to a personal agenda of likes and dislikes. Now, why would this be important? Well, this is that science that is brought out in our Master's Gita explanation, in that our decisions and our thinking is naturally going to be influenced by our attachment to this physical form, and from the resultant fears and necessity to attend to its demands. Now, there's nothing wrong with the body. What could be wrong with this? This is the most incredible and remarkable creation and instrument. But what creates problems for us is when we identify ourselves with this physical body, when we think this is who I am. And that's all the ego really is. Guruji says that the ego is the soul identified with the physical body. So it's not that the ego is some horrible, terrible thing, but it's the soul that has forgotten its real nature and has become identified with this physical form. Or as Patanjali states in the Yoga Sutras, asmita, or egoism, is the identifying of the seer with the instruments of seeing. And just think for a moment, if we thought we're the eyes or the feet. I'm the one who sees through the eyes. I'm the one who moves those feet. But just let something happen to those eyes or feet. Have somebody step on or break my foot or poke me in the eye. Ow! I'm in pain. Wait a minute. My foot may be broken. Now I say, I'm in pain. A moment before, I wasn't the foot. When did I become the foot? It happens really fast. Yeah, we become the foot, the arm, the whatever it is, almost instantly. We've conditioned ourselves over incarnations to react and to try to avoid those pains and to seek pleasure. And the consciousness is so intricately interwoven with those sensations, with this physical form, with the identification of the body. Just look at a normal day. We wake up, we move the body out of bed, we get it into the bathroom, we probably look in the mirror, whoa, So we don't want to look at, so we put it into the shower, we get it all cleaned up, move it out of the shower, probably take a peek in the mirror for a little relief, and then we put some clothes on it, then we move it into the kitchen, put some food into it, get some juice, the coffee machine going, the bagel, whatever. Then we see we're late, so we put it in the car, drive it to the office or wherever. A couple hours later, we put some more food into it. Put it back in the office, and at the end of the day, put it back in the car, drive it back home, put some more food into it, lay it down at bed where we started, and the next day it starts up again. No wonder we're exhausted, I was thinking. So the point is, there is a point here, actually. Yes. It is easy for the soul to identify with this physical form because of all the energy that is flowing through this body. And Guruji says, where the energy is, that's where the consciousness is. So if our energy is continuously or regularly flowing through this form, out through the senses, contacting the objects of the world, then that will be our sphere of understanding. We'll be limited by that spectrum of experience. And then we can't help but have this as our only reality. And then we'll fail to develop that sanjaya, that divine insight, or that buddhi, that pure discriminate intelligence, and instead be guided by manas, the so-called lower mind that is dependent on the senses, Guruji says, for its understanding. And we'll tend to put all the eggs of our happiness in the temporary basket of physical existence. And then as a result, by definition, we can't help but feel insecure or have fear or helplessness. So Dayama goes on, relating this back to our subject. She says, to know how to choose correctly in any given situation, We need to guide our judgments by the power of intuition. We are all endowed with this sixth sense, but most persons do not use it. Instead, they rely on the reports of 5 lower senses. But those 5 senses do not always supply the right data upon which we can react in the right way or make the right decisions. Aside from their limited scope and power, the senses and their master, the ego-identified mind, interpret things according to their own likes and dislikes rather than according to what is true and ultimately beneficial for the soul. Making decisions based only on what his external senses and lower mind tell him, it is no wonder man is so often in trouble. And so we're not saying, she is not saying, again, that the senses are evil. Again, just like the body, they're fantastic. They're wonderful. They're amazing. And we have a divine responsibility to look after this physical form, to take care of it, or to look after the forms of those that we love or that we're responsible for. And we don't have to starve the body. We can have fun. God created all these things. In fact, we were told that our master was an excellent cook, as was Sri Yukteswar, and that he liked making delicious treats and giving them to others, and then watching as their eyes rolled up in their foreheads, he said, as in samadhi. So he would say, eat food, enjoy food. Don't let the food eat you. That's yoga. That's what we want. And so the yogic science simply points out that the senses, again, are not evil of themselves. They're just limited. They're limited in their scope and unreliable as true messengers because they keep our energy and attention focused outside on the objects of creation, and therefore they're unable to reveal or put us in touch with the infinite, divine, eternal part of our nature. And this is especially that science of Kriya Yoga, whereby those knots of energy, basically, that tie us only to the physical body can be loosened by turning that same life force or prana that powers the senses back into the spine and brain. And when our consciousness identifies with that spark of God within us as the soul, then our thoughts and feelings will naturally be attuned to spirit. And we make choices based on the intuitive awareness of the soul and not from the limited mind or ego only. And then naturally, our whole life will change. Now, it doesn't mean that our outer circumstances will change. They might change, but they might be just as chaotic as they were before. Again, we might think signing on for this means we won't have any more problems. No, again, that's an ego-centered way of looking at things. That's a limited way of seeing things. But while our outer circumstances might not change, our understanding will change. Our perspective on those circumstances will be different. And we'll be able to cope with them. We'll be able to find peace, even in the midst of our difficulties. And even in the midst of our difficulties, we may be able to bring peace to others, even while we're going through our own difficult experiences. I remember back some years ago, Brother Premamoy, who I mentioned previously, and who has since passed on, he received news from the doctor that he had a relatively short time to live. My assignment in the ashram at the time was the assistant to the Pashlin house brother, and he was still in charge at that time in those last few years of his life. And for me, I had never met anybody who, on a daily basis, was more calm, more intuitive, more detached, more able to live his life according to these principles. And yet I was with him when we got back from the doctor. I was just alone with him, getting him back settled in his room. And I saw there was a look of deep concern on his face. I wouldn't say it was worry, but there was definitely a deep concern. It was dramatized by the fact that he was having trouble breathing, which was part of the condition. And thinking back, I don't think that the concern was because he was at all worried that he might experience physical suffering because of that condition. Rather, I think it was more that he was afraid that he might become a burden on others or become an invalid in that way. And again, with all respect, I hope he's in some other part of the universe right now, because he wouldn't appreciate, I don't think, my telling a personal story about him. But at the same time, what's so funny about that? Yeah, I might need your help. And again, with all respect to him or anyone in that situation, to wonder what somebody's inner thoughts or motives might be. But at the same time, whether it was or wasn't his, it may be something that might trouble us. It may yet be another example of another branch that we may have to let go of. We may have to surrender that. We may have to allow ourselves to be cared for by somebody else. That may be just part of what that particular experience is meant to be. But in any case, as I was there, almost as quickly as that concern was there, it left him. And he said, and he didn't really say it to me, he just said it out loud. Well, Master's never let me down before, so somehow everything's going to work out all right. Meaning, I think not only will God and Guru's blessings be there as before, but the blessings from following their principles, even in times of difficulty, will be there as well. Now, the condition didn't suddenly go away. He was still breathing just as hard after he said that as he was before. But what did go away was that concern, that fear. And what replaced it was that inner assurance, that feeling that our efforts at meditation give us that sense of, I know everything's going to be okay, that sense that I'll be all right. And of course, it did work out. In fact, he ended up living almost a year after that. He had to, of course, go to the doctor on a regular basis. And each time the doctor would remark to us how much better he felt after seeing Brother Premamoy. He would say, I always feel better after you come in. Maybe we should have sent him a bill. Brother Premamoy was able to give comfort to others even during his own discomfort. I was thinking to maybe share a little story about my grandmother. Before I came in the ashram, toward the end of her life, she was not feeling well, had different tests, and was diagnosed with colon cancer, and so she was in the hospital, and I called her. And she just was so brave about it, and she just says, well, I guess life begins at 80. And as soon as I could, I think the next day, I went to the hospital, and that's the part of the dream that's not a lot of fun. You can have all the philosophy in the world, but I think it's harder when it's somebody you love than when it's yourself. And there she was so beautiful, just so dainty, and this beautiful white hair. And we've come a long way with medicine, thank goodness, but still, just all the tubes and all the things. And I was angry, and it sort of took my breath away too for a moment. I just thought, it's like this little flower. It's like it just shouldn't be this way somehow. And that all happened like real fast in my mind. And so she was seated next to the window. So I sat down next to her, and then before we had a chance to say anything, she just said, oh, there goes another one. And I thought, now she's... and now she's losing her mind, But she wasn't. And what I realized was there was an airport nearby, and and so there would be planes regularly taking off. And she just stunned me because she said, every time I see a plane go by, I send a little prayer and I say, pleasant journey, safe return. And I just thought, that's my grandma. I didn't know I was living with a saint. I think it's such a powerful metaphor that through the little window of our life or a particular experience, we can expand fully into the universe, into the infinite. It's not that we deny our own suffering if we're going through something difficult. And I want to say also, even though we, Ma said, and we know our master, he liked to laugh, and it's good to laugh. It doesn't mean that we minimize anyone's difficulty. Somebody may be going through something just so horrific right now, and so we recognize that. We certainly do. But at the same time, we also know this is life. And any of us who have been on this path and have applied these teachings and principles know that they are more powerful than those temporary situations. And that's why those situations come, because it gives us the realization so that the soul can establish and assert itself and show its dominance over the temporary situations of life. And I'm sure we feel, just like our master felt, there has to be a better way. He argued with God that, it's easy for God. He's off somewhere, untouched by his creation. Our master said when he communed with God the Father and saw how it was and why it was, he could only say, "Glory to the Father." And so it's a common experience, and I'm grateful, and I think we all are, and I think this is why these situations happen, either to ourselves or to our loved ones, because if we're able to show heroism, or if they show heroism, we are inspired by that. Our master said we should be good photographers and take pictures of beautiful experiences, but we should photograph the good examples that we see around us, because in our own times of trial, then we'll draw on that. That's how we help each other. And if we're able, even when we're in our own difficult times, to think of someone else, to offer a prayer for somebody else, I believe that is really the way through the maze of those difficult experiences. They rouse the soul and gives us just enough strength to get through our own suffering. All right, so after meditating, about 20 minutes ago, I started talking about the method, I think, of how to, but it makes sense to spend more time on the first point that Ma gave of meditation, because that is the foundation. That's the foundation for us. She said, after meditating, that's the time then to pray. We've made ourselves calm, then pray. Pray to God, pray to the Guru, pray to whatever form is near and dear to you, and ask to be guided, to be led to the right thing that you should do. In the ashram, we begin all our meetings, almost without fail, with a period of silence, and then we pray Master's Prayer, something similar. I will reason, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right thing that I should do. And of course, mean it. I've caught myself sometimes, it's just blah, 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 and then I launch right into my agenda. That's not what, maybe there is a better way, and that's what we're trying to tune in with. In fact, going deeper, our master said something so profound and revealing in his commentary on chapter 4, verse 34 of the Gita, if you want to write that reference down. He gives us a divine tip that we can use and that we can hold him to as well to get this guidance that we're seeking. He said, a disciple residing far away from the Guru may practice a spiritual method of communion. The Guru, one with God, is present everywhere, including the wisdom center, the point between the eyebrows of all men. At the end of meditation each day, the disciple should concentrate at the point between the eyebrows and visualize his Guru. Thinking of him with love and devotion, the disciple should ask the questions he wants answered. If visualization of and concentration on the Guru are deep, the Chela will invariably receive silent answers to his questions in the form of accruing inner perceptions. In this way, the advanced disciple can contact the Guru even after the master has left the mortal flesh for invisible omnipresence. So Master's telling us how we can contact him. And we can hold him to that technique. And I was thinking, after all, where are these great souls? Where is the Guru? Where is Divine Mother, if not right here, if not right within each one of us? And yet, I think it's understandable also when our Master puts before us this kind of potential, that it might reveal perhaps some of our fears, which again come from the ego or from our consciousness identified with the body, because wouldn't it completely change our life if we knew, if we felt for certain that we could actually contact the Guru, each one of us, completely change our life. Not just theoretical. We all know this theoretically, but if we actually believe that at the end of meditation, we could put our attention there and that he's actually there listening and will actually respond to us, change our entire life. And so many of us may already have that faith, but if not, that's okay. We can ask Master to deepen that faith after meditation. Master, help me to know that this applies to me. How do I know this? How can I make this my realization? And then make ourselves unconditionally receptive by following what we already know we should do in that direction and following what new insight might come to us. And so the last part of this process of finding soul guidance is after we have meditated, after we've calmed the body and mind, after praying to God and Guru for help and guidance for their will to be done, then we use, like Master's prayer, we use our reason and feeling to come up with a course of action. And then keeping that feeling of God's presence with us as best we can, we will and act until we achieve our objective. Or we modify that as we go along, as new insight comes to us, and then we will and act some more. Our Master said, go to God, pray and cry to him until he shows the workings of his laws to you and guides you. Remember, greater than 1,000,000 reasonings of the mind is to sit and meditate upon God until you feel calmness within. Then say to the Lord, I can't solve my problem alone, even if I thought 1,000,000,000 different thoughts. But I can solve it by placing it in your hands, asking first for your guidance, and then following through by thinking out the various angles for a possible solution. God does help those who help themselves. When your mind is calm and filled with faith after praying to God in meditation, you are able to see various answers to your problems. And because your mind is calm, you are capable of picking out the best solution. Follow that solution and you will meet with success. This is applying the science of religion in your daily life. So never get discouraged. That's easier said than done for all of us. The Dhyama says again in this booklet that faith, this attunement, it develops gradually. Those are her words. It doesn't come all at once. It comes gradually, but come it will. Someone once asked our Master what he considered to be the most inspiring passage in his autobiography for the average person. That's a tremendous question. And the story goes, our Master reflected for a while and then said, these words of my Guru Sri Yukteswar, forget the past. Human conduct is ever unreliable until man is anchored in the divine. Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now. The Master considered this the most important, the most inspiring passage in his autobiography for the average devotee. It's that important. And note, Sri Yukteswar didn't say one or two things will improve, or a few things will improve, or even a dozen things will improve. He said everything will improve. Our whole life will change. So the idea is not to feel guilty, not to think of all we should be doing, but just to be sincere and honest with ourselves while trying to make that ever better and offering whatever we can with love and devotion at the feet of God. There's a passage in Edwin Arnold's poetic rendering of the Gita that expresses this point so beautifully, where Krishna has explained to Arjuna how the Lord can be found, and yet with compassion he explains how difficult this can be. Krishna says, but whereso any doeth all his deeds, renouncing self for me, full of me, fixed to serve only the highest, night and day musing on me, him will I swiftly lift forth from life's ocean of distress and death, whose soul clings fast to me. Cling thou to me. Clasp me with heart and mind. so shalt thou dwell surely with me on high. But then Krishna brings it down a little bit. He said, but if thy thought droops from such height, if thou beest weak to set body and soul upon me constantly, despair not. Give me lower service. Seek to reach me, worshiping with steadfast will. Then he brings it down a little further. He said, and if thou canst not worship steadfastly, work for me. Toil in works pleasing to me. For he that laboreth right for love of me shall finally attain. Then he brings it down one final time. He says, but if in this thy faint heart fails, what does he say? Bring me thy failure. Find refuge in me. Let fruits of labor go, renouncing hope for me. With lowliest heart, so shalt thou come. So it shows our whole life is yoga, union with God, the ups and downs, the successes and failures, dedicating all our actions, all our efforts, even our failures, to Him. Because what it means is that we all can do it. We would not be sitting in this room or the Pasadena room or the parents and infants room if we didn't have the potential, each one of us, to find God, to attain this realization. So as someone once said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Isn't that good? We're perfect. We're already made in the image of God, each one of us. All we have to do, as Guruji said, is improve our knowing. So as mentioned in the beginning, we have come to the right place, to the safety and shelter of our Guru and his teachings, to this convocation where we can learn how to meditate, to learn the techniques of meditation or brush up on the techniques if we already know them, how to develop devotion, how to combine devotion with our practice so that in this spiritually charged atmosphere of convocation we can deepen our faith, our realization that God is up there, He's down here, He's within, He's without, He's in whatever city, whatever country we go back to, He's right here, all the time. And that they will surely help us navigate through the maze of our life's experiences. So we'll close with these words of our Guru. He said, whenever your mind wanders in the maze of myriad worldly thoughts, patiently lead it back to remembrance of the indwelling Lord. In time, you will find Him ever with you, a God who talks with you in your own language, a God whose face peeps at you from every flower and shrub and blade of grass. Then you shall say, I am free. I am clothed in the gossamer of spirit. I fly from earth to heaven on wings of light. And what joy will consume your being. So I wish you a most wonderful rest of convocation and the joy and assurance and comfort that this path in the presence of God and Guru will bring to each one of us. Jai Guru.
This has been a production of Self-Realization Fellowship, a non-profit organization founded by Paramahansa Yogananda in 1920. For more information about Self-Realization Fellowship and Paramahansa Yogananda, please visit yogananda.org.